Well, thank you very much. What a terrific honor. Really, thank you to the board. Thanks to all of you. I almost feel like I should grab my award and run out of here before someone realizes I know less about behavior analysis than anyone in this room. I know a little bit, probably more than most people, and I have infinite respect for the field, and for that I should acknowledge my daughter Rachel, a BCBA. Thank you, Rachel, for introducing me to the field and teaching me what I do know. So let me say a few words about a subject I do know something about. In fact, I would say I'm an expert on it, and that is why you shouldn't trust experts. So it seems to me when I look around the world and the problems in the world, and there are many, that most of these problems could really be defined as behavioral problems. Certainly we don't take care of our health. There's a lot more we could do for our health. We don't do as good a job, many of us, as we should at parenting and educating. Certainly there's a lot of mistreatment of people in the world. We manage to somehow perpetuate poverty and prejudice. There's a lot of violence in the world. We could certainly do a lot better financially in so many ways, individually and as a society. And I think it's pretty well recognized that we are degrading the environment in ways that probably will end up biting us pretty badly. And so to me, and probably I think most of you would agree, these problems could really be alleviated to a large extent if we did a better job behaviorally. But think of it from the public's point of view. They're not behavior analysts. Most of them don't have BCBAs for daughters. And so they may not see these as behavioral problems. They're tabula rasas, essentially, when it comes to thinking about, well, what do we do to fix a lot of this stuff? Well, so there's the question. From the public's point of view, we can all ask, how do we solve these problems? And they look around, and what they see is many, many conflicting claims about what these problems are. Are they even really problems? And what is it that we ought to do about it? What sort of approach should we take? And behaviorism pretty much gets lost in the shouting somewhere. That means the public has to somehow take note of all these claims, they can't help but take note of them, and figure out how to navigate through them to the right answers. But of course, ideally, we'd love the public to go out and look at the research and evaluate the whole body of research of these different claims. And if they did, I think they'd end up seeing this as problems of behavior, and they would turn to you guys for solutions. But of course, the public's not capable of doing that. So that means the public needs to be guided to answers through this sea of conflicting claims. And so the question becomes, who guides them in this act of navigation? So here, let me present to you with absolutely no evidence or data. Sorry, Rachel. A list of the trustworthiness of the different experts who would like to lead us through some of the different claims. So I say the most trustworthy group is engineers. They got to build this stuff. It's not theoretical. If they make mistakes in their theories, stuff falls down. So pretty much what engineers say we know is right. Behavior analysts, I don't have to sell you on that one, we'll come back to it anyway. Military leaders, they have a very grim but effective sort of feedback if they make mistakes. So they tend to end up with the right answers eventually. Biologists, all right, now we're starting to get away from the truth a little bit. Biologists are pretty good. They do some good studies. A lot of it's on animals, doesn't always translate to humans. A lot of the stuff, they can't measure a lot of the things they want to measure directly, so they start to run into trouble. Executives at corporations, they have a bottom line. That's good. If they screw up, eventually they lose money, they figure it out, but there's a lot of shenanigans they can do in the meantime. Economists, now we're really starting to run into trouble here. Studies have shown that virtually all their findings are wrong, but still they are scientists, and they are database. And now below this line, we're getting to people, you can pretty much ignore almost everything they say. And that's journalists like me, psychologists, lay people, what do they know? And of course, celebrities who are basically lay people with a screw loose. And finally, politicians, enough said there. Okay, so why did I put behavior analysts so high up? Second only to engineers. And by the way, I showed that slide to Rachel last night, and she was furious that I put behavior analysts second. But they were pretty high up. And two reasons. One is, first of all, and this is my favorite thing about behavior analysis, the recognition that this isn't simply about figuring out what the right behavior is. That's easy. That's what everybody else tries to do. It's about what can we actually get people to do? How can we help people achieve behavior change? That's what you guys focus on. It's easy to say, well, if you want to lose weight, just eat less, just cut carbs, just exercise more. How do we get people to actually do that? And the second thing is you focus on real world studies. Everybody makes such a big deal about randomized controlled trials. Most of them are wrong. Most of them come to the wrong answers for a variety of reasons. You guys work with the real world stuff in all kinds of settings, and that's really what counts. Okay, so we know who's trustworthy. Who does the public turn to? They turn to people like me. They turn to celebrities like Gwyneth Paltrow. And they turn to whatever it is they can find online. And so why do they turn to these things instead of the experts they should trust, instead of turning to you guys? It's because these things, journalists, celebrities, and social media, they have high narrative appeal. And this is something that Al Poling touched on very effectively. It's about stories. Okay, so what has high narrative appeal? Why can't you do this? Well, here's what has high narrative appeal. It's blaming problems on evil agents. That is the most compelling type of narrative to present. You'll see it all over the New York Times. Evil agents, so bad institutions. I know this type is small, I'm sorry, it's an eye test. For those of you who can't read it in the back, just assume it's very intelligent, what it is you can see. So evil agents, institutions, corporations, governments, the field of medicine, they're doing something wrong to you and it's their fault. Or physical agents, like chemical toxins, different types of foods, or it's the bacteria in your gut that's causing all your problems. Or it's internal glitches in your mind. It's your emotions and thought processing. We just have to fix the way you think about this. Or it's your genes. Your genes are causing all the problem. And finally, what people love, what has really high narrative appeal, are simple, single-factor solutions. And that means if we're going to solve our problems, we need some sort of magic curative treatment, or we need to take some physical agent that's causing all the problems away from you, or we have to take down the institution. It's those evil big corporations that are causing all these problems in society. Okay, that's what has high narrative appeal. What has very low narrative appeal? What do people not want to hear in terms of stories? Well, it's complicated. There are a lot of processes involved. It's many things that are involved. This isn't one thing. We have to really tackle many problems at once. They don't like hearing that. The solution takes time. We're going to grind it out incrementally, bit by bit. We'll get there, but it's going to take some work. Be patient. And finally, look, thoughts and emotions are great, but they're not always at the root. We can't always deal with them. We can't always do something with them. So de-romanticizing thoughts and emotions, people hate that. People hate that. To sum it all up, you guys have the lowest narrative appeal of any field I've ever encountered. Okay, so you don't have high narrative appeal. It's not your fault. You're right. You would think that would count for something. No, it doesn't. Not in the public's eyes. There are no contingencies in place in society to reward rightness in public debate. Narrative appeal will win every time over rightness. People don't look back and say, wow, that person was wrong every single time. Maybe I should stop listening. They keep listening. You can say, but we have the data. We have the scientific evidence. Everybody claims to have the scientific evidence. Yes, yours is better. You have more of it. The public can't tell the difference between 3 incredibly bad studies and 500 great ones. Once somebody gets a narrative in their mind and they believe it, it's very hard to shake that story from their heads. And this is sort of surprising, but the susceptibility to the great narrative, it has little to do with how smart or educated someone is. Some of the smartest, best educated people have some of the silliest beliefs, and you can't dent them with any amount of evidence or logic. The problem gets perpetuated by people like me, by my fellow journalists, because we thrive on these popular narratives. We create them, and we keep building on them, and we create new ones all the time. As politics becomes more polarized, the problem gets worse because liberals love evil agents. It's someone else's fault. We gotta fight that. And conservatives love personal responsibility. You broke it, you fix it, it's your problem. Science, meanwhile, knows they need the press, so they start catering to journalists. So they play the game, and of course, whatever bad ideas are out there, you can be sure social media will get it out there to more people faster than ever. What can you guys do? Well, it's tough. I don't have an easy answer. If I did, I hope you wouldn't believe me at this point. But for one thing, you need to recognize you're competing in a crowded marketplace of claims. Understand that. Understand that stories and simple-sounding solutions win out over science and evidence every time. Understand that if you're stuck with the truth, as you guys are, you have a much harder product to sell. It's much easier when you can make stuff up. Understand that when you go out there to sell this stuff, you're competing with people who are very, very skilled at it. You need to get better. And finally, understand you're dealing with a public that has no idea that it needs you at all. It does, but they have no way of knowing that. You've got to sell them on that. It's really hard. It's worth doing. I don't want to compromise your integrity, but this is a game you've got to get better at because what you do really matters. And it's really been a great honor for me to try to work with some of you, and thank you so much for everything.